Yo, yo, yiggity, yo. Hey. Um, well, I have a ton of new people that like to sort of tune in and hear some of the stuff that I have to say. So, based on all of the new people, thought I would go ahead and reiterate some of the stuff that I've already repeated. Um, well, I guess it was about maybe 10 years ago when I first had the epiphany of the theory of evolution, but not in any way that anybody knows currently. Like, everybody knows the theory of evolution to be the Darwin's theory, and how in Madagascar there was this study of all of these birds, otherwise known as finches, and their particular breed, and, well, the bird watcher supposedly saw that a lot of their beaks were changed or shaped differently, and assumed to say that, well, dominating traits would carry over into the offspring while inferior traits would basically disappear. And so it was then written in a book. Now, you have that as what everybody knows is the theory of evolution. That it takes an entire lifespan to pass one small trait to the offspring, and then it moves a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger. And then we're a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, a little smaller. It just depends. Now that you understand that there is something that changes in any species given enough time, you know what the supposed concept of the theory of evolution is. Now, I've always known that too. In fact, I still remember my teachers explaining it like in every single way in my elementary school. So, I mean, well, anyways, I'm laying there about 10 years ago, and I'm just thinking about this group of horses that are running across the desert, and they're being chased because of some lions. Now, all of them get finally across this desert. They spend every ounce of their energy. They can't go anywhere, and then there's just one type of tree sitting there. And it's totally out of reach, and they all just start crying. And they're just like, well, why did you bring us here if you're just going to taunt us with these ridiculous trees? Now, there's this wandering evolutionary god, and basically decides to answer their prayers. And all of them at once get tapped on their forehead, and then they all just have this sort of change that erupts in their spines, and then their head just... Over the course of the next few hours, their heads are all the way next to the trees. Not way above the trees, not a foot under the trees, just enough for them to reach the trees. And those trees are still there today. They're not half the size, they're not twice as big, they're not having fun making really, really big giraffes after the first giraffes. It's almost as if the giraffe was there to signify for the rest of time and all eternity God's true colors, capabilities, and what the rules are. Now, the professors that are wandering over and they're looking at these giraffes are just like, what are the parameters here? You got danger, you got a big, vast desert, and then you have the I have to survive and I need food. And they're just like, but the trees were here first. In fact, they were practically called or the giraffes were practically called to them to sort of finalize this mathematical equation. It's like, It's not like they were racing across the desert and then the trees just decided to get tall. It's like, the trees were probably there first, and it's just like, dang it. What are we going to do with these trees? To basically allow all of the rest of us, for time and all eternity, all of the rest of us to see what God's true abilities are, they made one exemplified species, the giraffe, to prove how evolution happens, which is basically a prayer. Yep, over the next few hours, all the horses were as tall enough to reach the fruit on the top of these trees, or the trees themselves, or the branches, or the leaves, all that. So, and to further prove this theory, in case you're wanting to think about it, there is absolutely not one skeleton in the world of a half-size horse giraffe. So the concept of Darwin's theory is absolute stupidity. Meaning, if there was lifetime after lifetime after lifetime of the horse having to die, and then the tallest horse gets passed on to the offspring, and then that tallest horse of that offspring or herds of offspring gets laid more times than the other horses, and then the next group is taller, then where are the skeletons? They're not in any museum. In fact, we have so many everything else besides the giraffe and horse concept that you never think about it. So it's pretty much a foolproof evolutionary thesis that I ended up telling everybody this. Now, after I was finished with all of it, I happened to notice that well, before I get into that, I was going to talk to you about, well, then these professors are basically just obsessed with the concept, right? It's like it's talking to me. It's like, I mean, if you don't have any of these tabloids of the original thesis, if you're one of the very first wanderers of the world, it's really obvious to see that this was a horse that prayed and then its head got taller. Everybody in the professor industry knows that it's very obvious. Especially when you do find the skeletons beneath the trees. It's like, wow. So you just really needed that tree, didn't you? And that's where you have it, that it's obvious. Now the notes get passed on 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, and you have professors that are in control of construction crews and have trillions of dollars they made from this industry, that industry. They combine their thoughts and then they decide, let's do it. Let's make a big stadium with a basketball arena in the middle with two big hoops. You know? And that's where you have the concept of the tall tree being built first in the form of a stadium and basketball hoops being built first, and then this particular ghost that makes people or horses taller can just literally wander around and tap you. And that's where you have the professors of the world having a secret. The secret of if they deem you worthy to be tall, then you become tall. If they think that you're part of a select group, then you will be a part of that tall select group. Has nothing to do with morals, has nothing to do with right or wrongs, it has everything to do with entertainment and because they say so. In fact, you're literally a part of the chosen group as far as social standards go. When a tall person walks in, everybody has the subconscious impression of, so somebody obviously really likes you. And it comes from the godly area, the part that is, gonna decide that you don't have any problems for your whole life, by the way. No tall person, even today, can walk into a room and have everybody go, get him! Monster! And what is it really? What is it? How do we treat our tall people today? One time I was in a court building and I was sitting in the jury and I was waiting for just my simple misdemeanor charge to come up, but you get to listen to everybody else, right? And there was this really, really mean judge, and she was like 85 years old, and she was just the ugliest piece of shit you've ever seen. And well, she yelled at everybody. She had this mean, cold-hearted voice about her. I mean, she had these prostitutes as their lawyers, and defense lawyer and prosecution lawyer. This was her like secret sort of menage a trois sex scandalous courtroom. Your atypical courtroom across the United States of America, where it's absolutely not, and then of course it is. Well, this was her opportunity to yell at everybody, and then just decide based on her prostitutes that are her lawyers who she actually likes. Now, I wouldn't say that otherwise. I wouldn't say that except that one of the people that ended up going up to the podium to explain his case was this tall guy. Now, he was sitting amongst all the rest of us minutes before that, and man, was she mean. Now, when this guy stood up, and I have the ability to hear people's thoughts, And when he stood up to walk over, I could hear him say, "You want to see something crazy? Watch this." He had on a long sleeve button down shirt and he was standing up at the podium and she just melted in her place. And I can't necessarily remember everything that he said specifically because it's been a while, but basically what he was telling me is when he's talking to her, saying that he basically relapsed on going to his classes and he didn't make a payment, totally went into default, and then he said to me basically, like, his spirit looking over his shoulder, she doesn't even care. She's just going to restart the whole thing. And she goes, "Oh, here's what we're going to do." And her personality changed into like an 18-year-old schoolgirl because of what he could do in the porn laboratory. Yeah, somebody thinks that he's important, and so the old snake thought that he was important. Yeah, normal rules didn't apply. He got treated like he was royalty. And she reset everything. And it suddenly became true on what what her lawyers were dressed like. And it was all like everybody's jaw was dropped open for how many times she just sold somebody to prison. Except for this guy. And he was, just because his shoulders were wider and he was taller, not like he was a giant, just basically obviously somebody really likes me. I get whatever I want. And he just has to have a slightful bashful nature, and his unfortunate physical prowessness becomes up to her to excel into the beautiful land of Sextopia. And she had to let him know that she was really impressed with what she saw. So she made it clear with her voice tones and then let him off on everything and restarted everything. Even though she was a mean bitch in comparison to every single other person there. And that's just to put it in perspective about what tall people can get in the world. Now, you have now, the concept of the basketball hoops, and then now you have this tall guy, and you have the fact that there is no more athletics. Zero. I mean, they canceled everything. In fact, it could stay canceled. In fact, China could come over here and make everything a part of an electronic future. Every level of, you can draw a picture and make money in 5 years. You can have your kid build this or write this poem or make this story and then get some money for the household. I mean, whatever. Everything basically is on a scan basis or take a picture of something and then turn it in and then get an appraisal on it and then make money for your household. I don't know. But basically there's just not going to be any athletics. Not the way we knew it. So what do you have? You have this concept of, what is a giraffe in the world of Disney? Now you have all of these Disney kids freaking out because they're not going to get school anymore, or they got to get taught from their houses, and then you got all these movies on Disney Plus, and you're just like, well, there's only really 5 major movies that everybody knows about across the world. Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, and Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. Yeah, so you got a guy, and he's surrounded by all the rest of the movies are made for girls, and he is in charge of going and finding out about this getting tall issue without any athletic sports going around. By going up and getting the giraffe's head and just saying, hey, well, I know I don't play a sport, but do you need somebody that's tall just for speaking purposes? Like public speaking purposes? And that's where you have the situation of, this very interesting shaped golden vase that under very specific and obvious resemblances is a giraffe head. So all you need really is the proper requirements of some need to be able to yell at everybody and talk very fast and articulately, and to be very talented in the first place, to then just need to have the physical prowessness to say that somebody obviously likes me. And you have your situation of well, now being royalty or prince. Like everywhere I go, everybody always thinks that somebody really likes me. And that's where you have this concept of somebody that doesn't play a sport that still gets to be tall. The possibility of any of these kids walking around with no athletic sports in sight, but they can talk or they can play an instrument. And the concept of this ghost that makes people tall, wanting to show the rest of the world that I really like this person. So I just thought I'd bring it up to everybody because we're not getting our stadiums back. So if this is the way they want to do it, and this ghost enjoys making people tall for entertainment reasons, meaning now you're going to listen to what this person has to say because he just performed a miracle. So it makes you wonder if this ghost can and plans on making people tall.